Welcome back. We're making Easter bunnies with nothing but TruFlat Plywood. Today on LaserNug. Thanks for hanging out again. Today I want to walk you through some of the steps or the process I go through in determining what or how I'm going to build a product that I want to sell. It's going to be a simple Easter decoration. I'm going to use nothing but TruFlat Plywood as well as some 3M adhesive. That's it. I'll walk you through my process and how I come to the determination of how or what product I want to build, and I'll show you how I set up my production files in Lightburn. Let's do it. I'm going to grab one sheet of this 3M 467 MP adhesive. I've tested this stuff for months in different applications on the TruFlat product, and it provides a really high level of bond or adhesion to the acrylic finish on the TruFlat, including pieces that I've left outside for months through the winter. We're going to need 4 of the 6 different finishes from TruFlat. We're going to use the walnut, flat black, flat white, and I also like blending in this off-white or cream colored linen because the linen has a different finish, kind of more of a textured finish than the other products. Water and a rag. On the lighter stuff, whether it's TruFlat or other products, I like to mask it, so you'll need your mask and your scraper. And of course, anytime that you're working through a new product or design and you're doing different prototypes, you want to keep track of your costs and your time to determine whether or not it will be a profitable product or worth the effort to produce en masse or in quantities. So to start the process, I'm looking for design files that are really well structured. Lots of layers that I can separate, possibly use as pieces in other designs or incorporate in different designs, because I don't have the skills to go into CorelDRAW or Illustrator and create my own. And there's a lot of great designs. The second thing is you'll find over time that some of those designs are not very well structured. In other words, there's very few layers for you to play with or manipulate, but there's a lot that have like tons of layers. Everything is on its own layer, and those are the best type. 2 important things to consider. Make sure that whatever you're buying has an unlimited commercial license included, which means when you buy the design, you can recreate it 1,000 times on tumblers, mugs, plywood, whatever you want, with no limit. You just can't sell the actual design file or the digital file itself, which is totally reasonable. You want to stay away from unlawful type designs, ones that are using syndicated characters such as Disney characters, Winnie the Pooh, Peanuts characters. Even though those folks are selling them, I don't think they're supposed to be, because I know you're not supposed to be recreating them without a license from that holding company or Disney for that matter. I find my design, it's attractive, I want to work with it or attempt to work with it, so I purchase it for $4, $5, $6, whatever it is, because they're usually pretty reasonable. I bring it in and then I begin to manipulate it. Let's jump into Lightburn. This, for example, was the actual design file, and this is exactly how it came to me. Before I touch anything, I'm going to go up and I'm going to save as, and I'm going to call it working file number 1. That way, if I mess up really bad, I can just delete that file, go back and grab the original file untouched or unchanged and start again. Then I'm going to grab this and I'm going to group everything. Because quite often, even though it looks like it's grouped, there will be components often that are not grouped. And if you try to move or manipulate it, you're going to lose those pieces or have to go back and start again. Once she's grouped, I'm going to right click it and I'm going to duplicate it. And I'm going to do that 2 or 3 times. And I'm going to push them off to the side. Now that I have the file, I decide in my head how big an ornament, or in this case a door hanger, I want. This file came with a 7.5-inch height. And I just know that because it came that way to me. I don't want a 7.5-inch door hanger. I'd like something around 11.5 to 12 inches. So in order to manipulate it, now that it's grouped, all I have to do is grab and pull. And then I'll ungroup it. I'm going to check the size of the biggest piece, which is these 2 together. And I'm going to keep coming back, dragging and pulling until I get my backer, which is what this piece is here, to about 12 inches, thereabouts. Just a little under in my case because I have a bolt. Now I have to decide what type of material I want to test or prototype this with. And in this case, I'm going to use TruFlat Plywood. I know that the TruFlat comes in 12 by 19 inch sheets, and they're usually to spec about 11 7/8 by about 18 7/8, sometimes right on 19. So before I go any further, I want to make sure that in this case, I can get as many cuts off of one sheet as possible. And this is where you're back to manipulating it a bit. So if I grab this and I check the height and the width of this backer, I want to try to get it to an edge that I know it's going to cut successfully on 11 7/8 by 19 or by 18 7/8. And I also want to try to get as many pieces on a sheet as possible. Sometimes if you've got a really big piece, you're only going to get one cut out of it, and you're going to have some leftovers that you can use later for other projects. But in this case here, I was able to manipulate it so that I have a piece, if you take to the left, that is 9.9 inches wide by 11.2 high. That works out great for me because I can fit 2 of these on one sheet of plywood. This is my final size. That'll fill up a full sheet and it'll minimize the cost to produce this product. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to group my pieces based on what type of material I want. So for example, if I had chosen to do these pieces in MDF and maybe this one in TruFlat, you'll see that I write myself little notes here. I know that in the future I'm going to produce this with the black TruFlat and I do not need any 3M adhesive on it. The eyes, on the other hand, are going to be black, but I do need 3M. These ear pieces and the pads on the feet, etc., I'm going to use linen for that, and I'm going to need 3M, etc. And I group them that way. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take those pieces, and as you can see, it looks like they're all over the place, but what I'm trying to do here is create a width and a height that is repeatable and will maximize, once again, how many sets of that I can get, in this case, on a piece of TruFlat linen. And I do the same thing here with the white. These guys are all squished in here and my welcome is upside down. That's because I've got a perfect or the most efficient way of cutting this on a piece, because I can get 2 of these on a piece. I can get multiple of this on a piece. And similarly, I have this arranged in such a way that I can cut as many as possible on one sheet. Last thing I do is that I change my colors and my cut layers. I've got cut layers here. I know which ones need 3M. I've also got score layers on these pieces, and I also have some engraves where necessary. So now I've got the size figured out. I've maximized how many of those pieces I can get on a sheet, whether it's MDF, craft board, in this case TruFlat plywood. And so I have everything set up and I'm ready to go. In this case, we're kind of at a prototype stage. So for example, I've actually recreated the same product, but using different materials. Some painted, some not painted. Some have parts that are inlaid, some are raised. And what that does is that allows me to see different versions of the same design, colored, not colored, MDF versus TruFlat, craft plywood, stained if you want, and finished. It allows me an opportunity to track my costs on each one and the time it takes me to create them. And the last thing I do is I take those images or those prototypes and I ask a few other people, primarily my family and friends, to go through and tell me which ones they like best. And the reason we're making this one today is out of the 6 people that I asked, this was the number 1 or number 2 choice out of all the different versions. So that's why we're making it today. Last step, I'm just going to jump into Lightburn. I'm going to assign my cut settings and my engrave settings for TruFlat. I'm going to prep my materials, get them into the bolt, and we're going to cut them up and put them together. Alrighty, so we're done with the laser. All our parts are cut. It ran for just under 30 minutes. We've got enough parts to do 2 units. So I'm just going to peel some mask. We're going to grab some water and a cloth. I'm going to wipe down the parts and then we're going to put them together. So we're peeled and clean and ready for final assembly. I always like to do a quick dry fit on anything I do just to make sure something wonky didn't happen, maybe when I was lasering it or I had the wrong settings or there's, excessive scorch marks somewhere. And now that I know that everything's good, let's put them together and then we'll wrap up. Yeah, she looks nice. There's your finished product, all TruFlat. So I mentioned before, I like the fact that the TruFlat is two-sided, or good two sides, so I don't have to paint or do anything with the back of this or the backer. I am going to throw a little jute rope on there, get it glued on with a hot gun, and then she's done. Interesting development though, that was the very first one I've run through at an 11.5-inch size. The first few I did were at the standard size that the actual file came in, and that was 7.5 inches height. And you'll see here that the welcome and the tail kind of fit in there a lot nicer. However, when I expanded that file, everything fit perfectly, except you'll notice the welcome is a little bigger than it should be, and so is the tail. So what I'm going to do before I finish that production file is I'm just going to shrink down the word welcome, and I'm going to shrink that tail down a little bit. And then I think things will fit in a little more naturally. Then I'll finalize that file and put it away as a production file. And now that file is finished for future volume. I've now run through this several times. I've now done the larger size, got a couple of tweaks, and I'm done. I know what it costs me to produce it. I know how much time it takes me to produce it. And I know, based, as I mentioned earlier, that I've already checked online to different similar types of designs or products. So I know what basically the market will bear. And then from there you decide whether or not that margin or that profit is worth your time. In my case, it is. Thanks so much for hanging out with me. I hope it was a benefit to some of you. And if you are a more experienced laser operator and you've had your business up and running and there's some ideas or comments you could add that might help all of us, I'd greatly appreciate if you left them in the comments below the video. Have a great week. Please be kind to each other, and I'll see you again right here. I'm Gord Potter, and you've been watching LaserNug. Cheers.